I know 90% of you clicked on this video just to see what I have to say in the first 30 seconds and then proceed to dislike this video and follow that up with a mean comment. To all of those people I say, hey, thanks for watching. Gotcha, bitch! But seriously, I may have been a bit dramatic with the title. PlayStation is not gonna die in the next couple of years, but they are heading towards a doomsday with the plans they have laid out for the future. And trust me, it is scary. PlayStation has had a rich history of offering one-of-a-kind, narrative-driven franchises that have become a staple for the PlayStation brand, even to this day. Games like Horizon, God of War, Last of Us, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, all of this prove this. But the recent PlayStation Showcase of 2023 painted a very different picture for the future of PlayStation. So what if I told you? Soon, it will be replaced by something everyone hates. A word that sends shivers down the spine of even the most Chad gamers. Microtransactions. That's right. According to Sony's future plan, they're going to be pouring 60% of their money on these microtransaction-ridden live service games that nobody wants. In the next few minutes, I will tell you why this is a horrible idea. Let's break it down. I have covered this topic a few times on this channel, but let me give you a quick refresher along with some juicy new details I found during my research of this video. Here's what happened. Sony was never directly involved with the video game industry, but they did provide hardware for console of a little known company called Nintendo. Hello! That's right, Sony would provide the sound chips for the Super Famicom or the Japanese SNES. SNES means Super Nintendo Entertainment System for all you millennials out there. Partnership blossomed and both companies decided to collaborate in creating the CD-ROM add-on for the Super Famicom. This add-on would take the name, drumroll please, the PlayStation or SNES CD. At CES 1991, Sony officially unveiled the PlayStation CD add-on. But the very next day, Nintendo broke the deal with Sony and went with Philips instead. You heard that right. Nintendo announced this right after Sony did the CES showcase. Fucking brutal. You might wonder how Nintendo could do that? Well, because they are Nintendo and they can do whatever the fuck they want. Sony was now pissed after this public humiliation. The then Sony president Norio Oga commissioned one man to further the research and development on PlayStation to rival Nintendo. And that man was Ken Kutaragi. Oga said to Ken, "Show Nintendo what it means to fuck with us. Make those bastards pay." Okay, he didn't actually say that, I made that up. But I would assume that's how the meeting went. And the rest is history. Cue the PlayStation montage.
I'm going to ask Sony Computer Entertainment President of America, Steve Reyes, to join me for a brief presentation. $2.99.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Whoops. 誠に申し訳ございませんでした。
For disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play. And it won't stop working if you haven't authenticated within 24 hours.
Come on, Sony, stop playing with me, man.
Oh my God! What is that? What are you talking about? Whoa!
What is that spaceship-looking thing?
Saying the PlayStation's journey has been a roller coaster would be an understatement, but it is important to understand why it is such a pivotal phase to gauge what they are going to do next. So let's talk about that. It's said that if you don't learn from the history, it tends to repeat itself. Sony PlayStation had learned a lot from its screw-ups. After the success of the previous two consoles, Sony launched the PlayStation 3. It was easy for the developers and went on to become the most selling console, even outselling the PS2. At launch, the PlayStation was priced $399.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
$599 US
You see, the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2 were hugely successful consoles. If the PS1 was the launchpad for the company, PS2 was the actual fucking rocket that lifted the brand to new heights. It sold around 150 million consoles worldwide, making it one of the best-selling home consoles of all time. Going by the same metaphor of rockets, PS3 was the crash and burn part of that rocket. We will talk about all that soon. What led to the PS1 and PS2 sales were the games. They broke new ground, offering incredible stories and a sense of adventure. Games like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy, Castlevania, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Legend of Dragoon, Siphon Filter, GTA, Devil May Cry, Ratchet & Clank, Shadow of the Colossus, Jak and Daxter, God of War. There are so many good games. And what is common among these games? They are all story-driven, action-adventure, single-player games.
No shit, Sherlock!
When it was time for the PlayStation 3 though, Ken Kutaragi, now dubbed the father of PlayStation, decided that PS3 would be his swan song, his final goodbye to Sony and PlayStation. So he wanted to go all out with the PlayStation 3. And all out he went.
Oh boy!
Little did he or Sony know, it was going to be the biggest setback for the company. Now Sony, under the leadership of Ken Kutaragi, decided to do a threesome with IBM and Toshiba to give birth to what is known as the cell processor. Each company would benefit from this tech. Sony wanted to use it for the PS3 and its other electronics. IBM wanted to use it for complex calculations and Toshiba for their TVs. This would be a 4-year endeavor and all three companies would heavily invest in this technology. Sony alone, under the leadership of Ken Kutaragi, spent over $400 million on the research and development of the cell processor. That makes anyone go yikes even harder on the PS3 launch, now doesn't it? At E3 2006, this infamous moment happened.
$599 US.
In the same showcase, Ken showed off the PlayStation 3 design and off stage, we got to see the controller. This was going to be the controller. Look at it!
What the? Holy shit! What the fuck was that?
Sony got so cocky with the success of PS1 and PS2 that they completely ignored their competitor, Microsoft's Xbox 360. I made a similar video about Xbox which you can watch here or the link will be in the description. But to cut it short, it was the perfect storm for the Xbox 360. They dominated the 7th generation of console for almost 7 years. While IBM and Toshiba benefited from the cell processor, it was a nightmare for developers to adapt it for game development. This made Xbox 360 the go-to console for developers. Ken, while being a visionary, was also an enforcer and difficult to work with. He wanted results no matter what. Ken was asking developers to learn about his new processor while Xbox was already released and out in the market and developers were more than happy to develop on Xbox 360. For Ken Kutaragi, PlayStation 3 was the last hardware he would work on, so it was personal. But this led to games performing better on the Xbox 360. But during this time, Sony's internal studios were hard at work to make full use of the cell processor. And oh boy did it pay off. Sony ends the 7th generation coming out on the top, and guess what helped them do it? Single player games. If it can happen 2 generations ago, it can happen again. But someone is too stubborn to admit it.
We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony.
Games like Uncharted, Killzone, Infamous, Metal Gear Solid 4, God of War, Last of Us, all of this single-handedly made people want to get a PS3. My Xbox 360 was collecting dust once the barrage of games started in 2009. Uncharted 2, to this day, remains one of my favorite games of all time. I would be more than happy to buy a PS3 for just that one game. All this is to say, single-player games made PlayStation what it is today. These games put the spotlight on PlayStation 1. They made PS2 the best console ever. They saved the PS3 from all the screw-ups and helped PS4 lead its generation. So what's Sony's next move? What the fuck? PlayStation has definitely seen its ups and low downs. Apart from the disastrous PS3 launch,
The stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab.
They even faced a network hack, which meant approximately 77 million accounts were compromised. The PlayStation network itself was down for almost 21 days in 2011. They had failed hardware like PS Vita, they had failed software like PlayStation Home, and many more. But none of this will compare to what Sony is planning to do next. And I can already see this is gonna crash and burn. In a recent business presentation, Sony showed off this chart. This chart shows how Sony is planning to invest in the portfolio by 2025. And if you couldn't already tell, they plan to invest 60% on live service games.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
We already saw a glimpse of this in the recent PlayStation showcase, where the only single-player PlayStation Studio game was Spider-Man 2. But that's not all. Apparently, there are a total of 12 live service games in works at PlayStation Studios. The showcase alone had 4 to 5 games that were going to be live service. How can you spot a Sony live service game? Well, Sony has said that they will never release a AAA blockbuster title on PC for at least 1 to 3 years. Fair enough, but the live service game on the other hand will be day one on PC and PS5. So any game announcement on the PlayStation Studio that has a PC release is a live service game.
Yes, science!
So why is it a big deal? What is wrong with Sony investing 60% on this games as a service model? I'm glad you asked. Well, for Sony, it means more money. Live service games do make a shit ton of money. Activision Blizzard generated $1.82 billion in a year just off of microtransactions in games like Call of Duty. Bungie is profiting off of Destiny 2 for 7 years. They have 900 employees for fuck's sakes. For a customer like you and me, however, it is a different story. When you spend your money on a live service game, you're committed to it. You won't bother playing anything else. For example, when I was knee deep in Apex Legends, yeah, I had issues. All I would think of is grinding the battle pass so I can be ready for the next one. That was the only game I would stream. Even when I was playing a AAA game, I would still jump back to finish the battle pass like it was part of a job. Customers who spend their money on one live service game typically have no time to play other games, or even other franchises. Sony would be shooting themselves on the foot by essentially expecting their audience to play 2 to 3 live service games a year, instead of coming up with great single-player experience that the company is known for. Too much content could also be a bit overwhelming. Even though gamers are known to have no life, aka me playing Sekiro for the 19th time, we still once in a blue moon have to go out and touch the grass and work to earn the money. You know, the things Sony wants from us to begin with. It comes down to keeping your player base alive. They should be able to leave their house or their mother's basement. With 12 live service games, that seems a bit challenging. People on the Microsoft or Nintendo side envy Sony's exclusive catalog, one more than the other. Even from a developer standpoint, it is asking too much for a studio to just come up with network features and figure out how their franchises could work with a live service model. We have seen companies fail to deliver a live service game again and 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 again. And of course, how can we forget Redfall? The game's development had gotten so bad, some employees wanted Microsoft to come in and just cancel the game.
Yikes.
This is also true for some upcoming games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League from Rocksteady. They made the best Batman games ever. Now they're struggling to just put out one game for like last 8 years? How does that happen? Now you could say, why bother playing live service games and just move on to single player games? Well, yeah, that's exactly what I did when I quit Apex Legends. But I can't say the same thing for you. Yes, you, the real person I'm definitely talking to.
They ask you how you...
Some people just like to stick with the live service model. They won't give 2 shits about a single player game. You know, the reason why consoles exist? There could be an alternate universe where this works out and live service games becomes a norm. But judging by how 90% of the developers are struggling to get a live service game to work, it seems highly unlikely in this universe. Speaking of struggling, how about Naughty Dog? Yes, Naughty Dog's Last of Us multiplayer game recently got delayed again. An internal report suggested that some people at Bungie saw their game and said, "Lol, what the fuck is this? This won't fly fam, cancel it." Okay, they didn't actually say that. I made that up again. But It must have been something along those lines, which is why they pushed back the development on it and they are now focusing on a new single player IP, which they were supposed to do in the first place. I guess we would have got an announcement of a new Naughty Dog game if Bungie would have seen the game sooner. God damn it. Guerrilla Games is another AAA studio under Sony's belt that is working on a live service game. They created some fun multiplayer experiences, but I worry for them too. It's just not what they specialize in. The fact that everybody universally loves what Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games put out, and yet Sony makes them work on live service games, which is clearly not their forte, should be a giant red flag. Guerrilla's recent blockbuster title games were Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, with one DLC add-on story for each game. None of these games have multiplayer or online component of any sort. So Sony, what the fuck? It is definitely a very risky endeavor for Sony. But unlike Xbox, Sony is not in a rough spot this generation, at least for now. Xbox had no exclusives released last year, and when they got one, it was Redfall, and we all know how that ended. To Sony's credit, their first-party studios have many projects in development and many are not shown yet. I have more trust in Sony's first-party games than Xbox for sure. But is moving to live service game model a right move for Sony? Could this failure mean the end of PlayStation? Not likely. But it will be a huge dent on their portfolio, which was so far dominated by single-player exclusive titles. Here's my 2 cents to you, Sony. Do what you do best and make epic single-player games and step away from this live service model. Sure, there is more money to be made, but is it worth losing what you paid for almost past 25 years? I don't think so. So before it is too late, before you lose everything, before you have to be sorry, I'll just say one thing. Don't be sorry. Be better. Thanks for watching.